Hello. Thank you. Hello, Georgetown. It is great to be back here, and I am delighted to join you for this award ceremony once again. I want to thank Milan, who has been my partner, my colleague, and my friend for decades now. There's an old expression you've probably heard, if you want something done, ask a busy woman. Well, I have to say that is Ambassador Milan Verveer summed up very well. The Institute for Women, Peace, and Security is a testament to her vision as well as her sheer determination to make that vision a reality. I also want to thank President DeGioia. He truly embodies the Georgetown motto of men and women for others, and his leadership about so many important matters, but particularly this institute, is absolutely extraordinary. You know, this university and this institute have flourished because so many people have seen its merit and have understood that it was filling a gap that many didn't even know existed. So I always am delighted to return to the hilltop and to sing the praises along with all of you of heroic women and men who have been recognized over the years for their commitment to advancing women in peace and security. So be prepared to be humbled, inspired, and energized. They are particularly relevant this year when the steady drumbeat of women speaking out about their own experiences has never been stronger. I think this is a watershed moment and a powerful reminder of how important it is to make sure that women have a place at any table where decisions are made, from the C-suite to media to government to the peace table, everywhere. We can all do a better job of making this a priority every day. And as Americans, standing up for human rights and against injustice around the world is vital. I would argue it is part of the American DNA. It is also, however, important to be clear-eyed about the challenges we face in our own country. That's true whether we are grappling with endemic harassment and assault, threats to women's health and reproductive rights, or pay disparities and other persistent inequities in our own economy. But no one should ever underestimate the power of women and girls not only to improve their own lives, but to help lift up families, communities, and entire nations. The extraordinary courage and resilience of women and girls in the face of vast inequity and injustice is humbling. I've listened to girls as young as 12 argue forcefully and passionately against child marriage. I've met activists who risk their own safety to speak out against honor killings. I've held the hands of women and tiny little girls who lived through unimaginable horrors and emerged determined not to be destroyed by what was done to them, but to do everything they could to prevent others from facing and enduring what they had. Through it all, I have seen that women are not only victims of war and conflict, but they are agents of change, makers of peace, and drivers of progress. That was truly the belief behind the creation of the Georgetown Institute for Women in Peace and Security, the first of its kind in the world, back in 2011. We came together to declare that the issue of women's full participation in peace and security could no longer be relegated to the margins of international affairs. And in the years that followed, the Institute has gathered the data to support what we knew in our hearts, that encouraging women's participation is strategic and necessary to peace, prosperity, and security. The tradition of women standing up for human rights and democracy stretches across centuries and continents. From the British suffragists who fought for and won the right to vote 100 years ago tomorrow, before we did, to the women around the world who are at the forefront of taking on urgent global threats like climate change and violent extremism, to today's honorees. There's Nadia Murad, a former captive of the Islamic State, a Yazidi human rights activist who is working to bring ISIS to justice while helping survivors of genocide and human trafficking heal and rebuild their lives and their communities. Nadia's work is close to my heart because for decades, we have tried to take on the global scourge of human trafficking. I started working on it as First Lady, as a senator, as Secretary of State. In fact, it was 20 years ago this March that with the help of your professor, Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, we worked with the Clinton administration to help change the way that America saw this issue, to recognize human trafficking for what it is, not a cultural artifact, not collateral, but a crime that deserves to be prosecuted. When we first took on this issue, we addressed what we called the 3 Ps of prevention, prosecution, and protection. During my time as Secretary of State, we added a 4th, partnership. We brought together NGOs, governments, and the private sector to fight together against human trafficking and forced labor. And because we know that this is not an issue that affects only the far-flung corners of the world, we made sure that for the first time, the 2010 Trafficking in Persons report included data on human trafficking here in the United States. This is not just someone else's problem. This is all of our problem. Our second honoree, Weiwei Nu, is a human rights and democracy activist from Myanmar. She spent years as a political prisoner under the Burmese military government. One of the horrors of her imprisonment was being cut off from everything that was going on in her society. So out of that experience, she has worked to raise awareness and mutual understanding and improve the human rights of the Rohingya. As Secretary of State, when I introduced Resolution 1888 to the Security Council of the United Nations, it was just months after visiting with survivors of mass rape and brutality in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We wanted to bring together the international community to expand our commitment to combating sexual violence in conflict zones, and we created the first U.S. National Action Plan on women, peace, and security to do just that. It was very gratifying to see the Congress pass a law to codify that national plan just last year, and I look forward to seeing our government implement it. In recent years, the evidence has only grown to support the fact that sexual violence in conflict is both a gross human rights violation and a security challenge. It fuels displacement, weakens governance, destabilizes societies. It inhibits post-conflict resolution and imperils the long-term stability of countries. Clearly, we still have urgent work to do. Just last fall, the current UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict traveled to Bangladesh, where hundreds of thousands have fled to escape the crisis in Myanmar. She reported that every single woman she met had either witnessed or endured brutal sexual assault. The stories of the atrocities being committed against Rohingya women and girls, some very young girls, should horrify each and every one of us, and more than that, should spur all of us to action. This is not a partisan issue in this time of such great partisanship. In fact, it's not even a woman's issue. It should be an issue that goes to the very heart of who we are as human beings, to our common humanity. Our third honoree, Lise Doucette, is a reporter who has worked to shine a light on the experiences of women and children in conflict, telling the stories that are too often overlooked. She has reported from some of the most important and dangerous areas in the world and done so with courage, compassion, and clarity. Good reporting is not only compelling and enlightening, it is absolutely essential. I still believe in truth, evidence, facts. There is no such thing as alternative reality. And we have to make sure that we don't try to live in it or let anybody else push us to live in it either. So at a time when expertise, truth, and facts are under siege, the work of journalists like Lee's is particularly crucial. Now, it's easy to be overwhelmed by all that's going on at the world and on the world stage and here at home. I know that. I get overwhelmed at least a dozen times a day. I've spent the last year traveling the country, meeting people at signings for my book and other events, listening to what's on their minds. And I've been asked more times than I can count, what can we do? Now, one answer is clear. Advancing the rights, opportunities, and full participation of women and girls is the great unfinished business of the 21st century. I intend to keep fighting to pursue this agenda and to remain on the front lines of democracy. But the most important question for everyone here is, what can you do? What will you decide to make your mission, your purpose, your passion, to use your education, your mind, your resolve to make our world a better place? And in particular, what can you do to make sure that the lives of women and girls is never again relegated to the backstage somewhere, seen as frivolous or a luxury that we can't afford because of all the other important matters that are facing us? I think the stories of today's honorees are proof of what's possible when we refuse to give in or let our voices be silenced. It is hard to continue to speak up, speak out, stand up against what you think of as obvious wrongs. But do not grow weary. Bring a sustained commitment. Think of these honorees. Don't get discouraged. Draw hope and inspiration from each of them, and leave here today with a renewed commitment to making your own mark on the world. I know that's what we need more than ever, and I'm very confident that this university, the students, and all of you here today can really make a difference. Thank you all very much.